In this segment, I'm going to talk about how to work with palettes and templates in SceneDesigner, in particular how to create templates from external files or from scratch and instance them into the scene. So we're going to start off here. This is SceneDesigner as you first launch it. What we're going to do is we're actually going to fire off a new scene, which this gives us a choice to choose where we want our palette folder to be. So you can either stick with the current folder, which happens to be in the holodeck sample palettes directory. You can go with the default folder, which is in the application data palettes directory, or you can choose a custom folder to select your palette directory. All palettes must reside in this single directory that you choose. For now, I'm going to choose the default directory. So you'll notice there is already a palette in here called General. I'm going to create a new palette here by clicking the New Palette toolbar button. And I'm going to give it a name. And that created this palette, and notice it contains no templates. So we can go back out and see. It shows up as bold because the palette has been modified. This means that when I close SceneDesigner or save the scene, it will save out this palette file that has been modified. And you can see the little modified moniker up here. This little drop down up here lets you switch between palettes, so I can go all the way back to the all palettes mode. Or let's say I'm in the general palette and I'm in the lights category. I can go back down and drill back up. Just shadowing lights. I can drill back up all the various. This is very similar to Windows Explorer. So now that we've got a palette, let's go ahead and create a template. We're going to create a template from scratch first. So we'll say add new entity template. We're going to give it a name. I'm very creative with my names. You can optionally give it a category. Click OK, and I now get a template. So you'll notice over here it added it into a category named My Category, and it popped up the template properties for that template. So I have to select the template here, and here's the properties. Notice it has no components in it, just has general properties there. We want to add some components to this template to add some properties. So we click the Edit button here and brings up the Edit Entity Template dialog. And here we can choose from the available components to add to this template. Notice some of them are grayed out. This means that these particular components depend on other transforms already existing on the entity before they can be added. So you'll notice if I add a transformation component, then several of these became selectable. So it's just the scene graph component, which references a NIF file. So we'll add one of those as well. So we have transformation scene graph. Now notice over here transformation became grayed out. This is because scene graph depends on properties provided by the transformation component. Therefore, we cannot remove the transformation component before removing scene graph. Once we've added all the components that we want, click OK, and you see that the new components are there along with the properties that they provide. Now, right now, these are our default values. Transformation obviously is all defaults, and the NIF file path is empty. And just for the heck of it, we're going to go ahead and add a file there. So we click on there, and it says choose a NIF file. We want to go in here and just choose a random NIF file. Okay, we can close this out, and now we have a new template here. And if we wanted to instance this into the scene, we can double click on it, click and drag to place it, and we now have a skeleton sitting in the scene. This particular model is not animated. This was from a NIF file. Another way, and much easier way, of adding a template that references either a NIF or a KFM file is to click the Add Art Assets as Templates button. This will pop up a dialog that allows you to choose any number of NIF, KFM, or any other files, and it will import any files that it knows about. So in this case, let's import Life Force, which is a particle system. When we click OK, it comes in and we can choose what category we want to put it in. And if you want to browse to the categories, you can do that. Say I'm just going to put it in the root of my palette. Click OK. And I now end up with a Life Force template. If we right click and look at the properties for this, you'll see that it's automatically added a transformation component and a scene graph component that points to the file that we chose. So this is really a shortcut method of importing or creating entity templates, and you can multi-select many NIF files and or even non-NIF files. I can multi-select a bunch of files here and say open, and it will go through and only add the ones that make sense, that are NIF files or KFM files that it knows about. So then if we take this new one that we instanced and throw it into the scene, we now have this particle system here, this life force particle system, which I'll scale up a little bit so it's more visible. Okay, that is the creation mechanism for creating templates into the palette. Now you saw on the components there that you can choose between, so let's go back to that so I can cover that a little bit more. Let's say I want to add extra data to every life force entity that is only usable by my game. So if we come into the components panel over here, we can see these are all the components that we know about. So you can look at them, see what their different properties are. Or you can click the new component button down here, give it a name. Let's say strength. That's actually not a good name. Let's say, well, sure, strength. We'll go with that. So we add that, and then we can add a property to this. And that property can be called amount of strength. And we want to make that, say, a float property. We can give it a description. Click OK, and you'll notice the property shows up in here. Or we can add a second property here, say direction of strength, and that can be a 0.3, and we're not going to give it a description here. So now this component exists in the components panel, and we can now choose anything. Let's say the life force here. Right click and say properties. Go in here and say edit, and you notice that our new strength component is available. We add it, click OK, and now we have these properties available in here. And more importantly, we have those properties available when we select the entity in the scene. That pretty much covers creation of entity templates and palettes. One other thing I'll mention is if you want to delete a template, you can do so by right-clicking and saying delete, but it will not let you delete it if an entity in the scene is using it. So you would first need to delete that entity, then you can delete the template. If you don't know which entity in the scene is using it, you can right-click and say select in scene, and it will select any of the entities that are based on that. And then you can delete that entity, and then you can delete the template. You can also delete a palette directly up here, which is a non-undoable operation. It actually deletes the file off of disk. You say yes, there you go. That's the end of this segment.